Hi, my name is Irene Violante, and today I am going to talk about developing English skills in the classroom. More specifically, I'll talk about teaching language skills. Okay, so let's talk about the famous four skills that for many years scholars, teachers, and linguists have divided into productive and receptive. And when teachers refer to productive skills, they normally mean speaking and writing because they have to do with students producing some kind of text, whether it's spoken or in writing. And receptive skills are those that have to do with comprehension, whether it's reading or listening. Now, this idea of dividing and separating the four skills at the beginning, caused some kind of I would say incorrect teaching because many teachers wanted to practice only speaking or only writing. And that's very difficult because that's not what happens when people use language in real life. So this idea of separating them, it's not the way to go. These skills are interconnected and they must be taught as such. For example, you can see the picture here. Writing and listening can be connected, but also writing and reading, reading and speaking, reading and writing, reading, listening, etc. And that's the whole idea, because that's what we do in real life. Here I would like to talk about this quote from Aldous Huxley. He says, "Experience is not what happens to you, it is what you do with what happens to you." And this applies perfectly to the teaching of the four skills, because you can change some of the words here and say, for example, reading is not what happens to you. It's what you interpret or what you understand that happens to you. Or speaking is not something that happens to you. Speaking is an action that you are involved in, and that action is what happens to you, and so on and so forth. So I would like to draw your attention to the left. There's a pyramid, and of course, you're probably familiar with this. It's the pyramid of Bloom's taxonomy, referring to high order thinking skills. And these are skills that we want learners to acquire, but of course, they cannot just be creative the first day they start studying a second language. They need to start by remembering words, phrases, or chunks of words, and then understanding so they can start applying their knowledge or their learning into different tasks. And something more complex is analyzing, evaluating, and the highest order thinking skill is definitely creating. But we want students to get to that point. So in order to get to this point, there must always be a purpose for everything we do in class, a purpose for writing, for reading, for listening, or for speaking. Without a purpose for reading or writing, then it's irrelevant to students. And these purposes also have consequences that might be good or bad, hopefully good. And that means that if there is a reason for reading, students will find it or try to find a way to do it. Okay, if there's a reason for listening, students will try to find a way to understand. So here we're talking about the why do I want to do a listening? Why do I want to read? And how am I going to understand and to get all the information that I need? It's important to mention that the practice of the four skills must be set up in a very interesting, appealing, clear, and achievable way so that they can also promote the use of other skills like critical thinking, problem solving, analysis, creativity, etc. And these skills will become something that students can use like a toolbox so they can practice and be effective using the four skills. Okay, something important also to mention is the context of situation, okay? We have three areas that as teachers it's important to cover and make sure students are confident with. The first one is field. It refers to the context. For example, if it's a speaking activity, what do I have to say and to whom? If it's a reading, what is the text about? What are the goals there? Okay. And also, if it's something for fun, if it's something for work, I mean, what kind of topic am I covering? And then the next one is a tenor. The tenor has to do with identifying the relationships between the parties involved in a reading, in a conversation, or any kind of activity, okay, even if it's writing. And it can also refer to the relationship between the learner and the text or another person, okay? The last one is the mode. The mode, it refers to how the information is presented. Is it in spoken form? Is it through a text for the student to read? I mean, or both, okay? How is this information presented? So our recommendation to get students, prepared for any activity to practice the different skills is an awareness activity. And here you can see this activity that has the three areas, the field, the relationships, and the medium. And if students fill this out, they will understand what they have to do. They will understand their tasks better, and they will have a purpose for speaking or for reading or for writing. Okay. So I wanted to do this in a very practical way. So I decided to ask some experts a very simple question. And it's the same question, but with different skills. For example, the first question was, what is your favorite speaking activity? And I'm talking, of course, about teachers that have experience. What is your favorite listening activity? What is your favorite reading activity? And what is your favorite writing activity? So let's meet the experts, okay? We have Kathy Johnson, who will talk about speaking, her favorite speaking activity. Erika Ellis, her favorite listening activity. Raul Cervantes, his favorite reading activities. And Joe van der Werf, his favorite writing activities. So let's see what they have to say to us.
Hi, my name is Kathy Johnson, and I have worked as an English teacher for 42 years now. It's been a long time. I have to say that I think my favorite speaking activities are more of a category of activities than a specific activity. It's where there's some kind, students are presented with a problem of some kind, and they have to work together to solve it. So it oftentimes involves giving students, let's say, a card with a name or with some information, and then a task to do. So for example, it could be something like you have 5 people and they are going to be renting an apartment, and each of them wants a different apartment, and you have to decide what's the best place for each of them and why, based on the kind of person they are, based on the apartments available. And so they have to work together to come to a solution. And you give the same problem to that group of students and another group of students. This way, they each come to their own solutions, and then they have to agree or disagree. The reason I like these kinds of activities because when students are doing them, they have to use many kinds of skills. They have to learn how to agree with each other, disagree with each other. They have to present their arguments as to.
Okay, so thank you, Kathy. As you can see, Kathy is talking about all the different skills I mentioned before. And something interesting too is that she says, I could give students a card or a note where they have some certain information. As you can see, we're talking about speaking, but sometimes we need another skill to back up the one we want to practice. and they come in form of text or something. And I have an example here of a book that is called Everyday Conversations, Learning American English, that you can download for free. It's an open source book, and it's printable and downloadable. So please feel free to go to americanenglish.state.gov and look for resources for the 4 skills. You can find material there. Okay, now let's move on to the next one. The next one is listening. Let's see what Erica has to say to us.
Hi, my name is Erica Ellis, and I am an English instructor in Washington State in the United States. My favorite listening activity is one that I've done with students who are at, I would say, an intermediate level or higher intermediate level. And what I do is I have students create a listening journal, and every week they choose a podcast episode, and it can be on, any topic that they're interested in. They choose a podcast episode to listen to, and they answer some questions about it in their journal. So the questions are usually things, like what is the main idea? Were there any new words that you heard in this episode, and things like that. And so it's a very independent activity. But then usually at the end of the week, I would have them in small groups talk about the episode that they listened to with some of their classmates, and sort of try to explain what it was about, and then classmates have the time to, ask questions. And I really like this activity because it allows the students to practice listening, but they get to choose the content. So rather than having, like a pre-recorded CD that I make the whole class listen to, they get to actually seek out something that they're interested in, whether that's current events or something related to, pop culture, whatever it may be. And so I think that it really fosters sort of that ability to practice and improve their language independently, because it's something that they can continue to do, outside of class and in their free time. And so that's why I really like that activity. It's also a great way to start introducing some new vocabulary words that students might not necessarily learn in class, but they might hear out in the real world. So yeah, that's my activity.
Oh, thank you, Erica. So as you can see, she's also talking about using authentic material. And basically, she's describing listening and working on a journal. So students have to practice writing too. And another important thing she mentions is the fact that students sometimes work independently or in groups. And that's how we vary activities in class. You cannot just practice listening and that's it, okay? So there's a way to always combine different skills and enrich activities. Let's go to the next one. The next one is reading, and let's listen to Raul.
Hi, my name is Raul Cervantes. I have been an EFL teacher and administrator in Mexico for almost 40 years. I have mostly taught teenagers and adults. And although I haven't been an actual classroom teacher for a long time, when people ask me what I do for a living, I still say I am an English teacher. When teaching students reading skills, normally we focus on comprehension, and we end up having students read the same text once or twice, normally taking a long time. One of my favorite activities is teaching students how to scan for information. And I like to do this, especially when preparing them for a standardized test. I find authentic material, such as a brochure, usually a travel brochure or a catalog or even a website. And I tell students that it's not always necessary to read the complete text in order to find the information that we need. So we play a competition called Found It. I throw a question and I see who answers the question the fastest. The trick is that the question can be answered by finding specific information in the text or even getting clues from the pictures. So we work as a group. I throw a question, I do the first 2 or 3 as a group, and then, the first person to find the information screams, "Found it." After the first 2 or 3 that I do with a group, I then direct them to a worksheet where they have a few more questions, and it's competition to see who can complete the worksheet first. It's fun, it's dynamic, and it helps students understand the value of scanning for information.
Thank you, Raul. As you can see, Raul is talking about reading something, and he's again talking about authentic material, just as Erica Ellis, but he's also talking about answering some questions or a worksheet or something. So he's integrating reading with writing. And I think that's a very cool idea. They're also speaking because they say found it, found it. So we're talking about 3 different skills, and the idea was to practice reading. Here I want to recommend, again, you can download this book that is called The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn by Mark Twain for your students. It's not the real book, so it's adapted to a lower level so students can understand. And again, go to americanenglish.state.gov to download it for free. Now let's learn about writing, and let's see what Jup has to say.
Hi, my name is Hugh van der Beer. I don't have a favorite writing activity, but I like to use the same old activities that we always do and give them a spin. For example, you can have your students work in pairs and ask them to describe their lives, their family, where they live, what they like to do on the weekend, their likes and dislikes. But you're not asking each student to write about themselves, you're asking them to write about the other person as if they were the other person. So for example, I can write as if I were Irene, and I can say, hi, or I would write, my name is Irene. I live in Mexico City with my husband and my son. I like to go to restaurants, etc., etc. Then after a few minutes, you tell students to stop writing, you switch, they exchange the writing and they give it to the person they described, and then they're going to compare what the knowledge that they had correctly and what they wrote incorrectly. They won't be checking for grammar and vocabulary and things like that at this point. And then later on, you can ask them to make like the language corrections. It's the same activity you always do, but it's surprising for students because they check what the other persons know about them.
Thank you, Jup. Well, this is a very creative way of using a simple writing exercise, but making it fun and challenging. Something I like is that it is a writing activity, but again, he asks students at the end to compare them and talk about it. So he's connecting writing to speaking. And something I really like that he mentions is that at this point, he's not correcting. I like it because as teachers, it's very important to understand and decide when to jump in and help students with correction, when to do peer correction, or when to just not correct at all, because they're enjoying it, because they're so into it, because they're practicing fluency or creativity, that interrupting them would be just so wrong. So, well, if you want to get some ideas to practice writing, I recommend this book that is called Developing Writing by Patricia Wilcox Peterson. Again, it's open source, so you can download it, print it, adapt the material. Feel free to go and download it right away. And well, as a conclusion, I would like to say that many scholars have divided language production into 4 basic skills: reading, listening, speaking, and writing. The first 2 are commonly believed to be receptive, reading and listening, and the last 2 productive, speaking and writing. However, they do not only have an interactive nature, they also need to be practiced as learners develop higher order thinking skills. Keep that in mind. The best way to achieve this is by making sure learners understand the purpose of the activity or task, the field, the tenor, and the mode. If students can see a personal or professional benefit or interest in performing a given activity, then the practice of different skills in a second language will become a natural process. Teachers must plan activities that cater to learners' ages, level of English, interests, needs, etc. And tasks should promote the use of 2, 3, or the 4 skills to create situations similar to those in real life. For instance, if I need to write an email to a provider, well, I have to understand what to tell the provider. And if I need to include other people or copy an attachment or include other people, if I have to inform about dates or schedules, if I need specific information, etc. Okay, and probably I need to talk to my boss about the email I'm planning to send, or I have to read a previous email. You know, sometimes there are threads of emails related to my reply, etc. And this simple exercise includes the practice of the 4 skills, because I need to talk to my boss, I need to read, previous emails, and I need to create the new one. So it is possible. And there are many different sites, webinars, books, courses, MOOCs, and free resources available for teachers to get ideas from and put them into practice in the classroom. The time invested in preparation will pay off with students' learning. And did you notice that different experts agree that activities must be fun? This is just food for thought. And my references here. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.